And for more on the newest travel rules, let's bring in Henry Harteveldt. Henry is the travel industry analyst and the president of Atmosphere Research Group. Thanks very much for joining us, Henry. I certainly appreciate it. I hope you had a chance to hear our first couple of stories. Obviously, we're seeing a lot of happy people arriving on U.S. soil after about 20 months. And I'm curious, with all this and hearing people talk about what's at stake, is there the belief that this is overdue? Could people have been arriving here safely over the past several months?
Sean, I did hear both segments, and as a person said in the second segment, this is a very happy day. The borders are open, the doors are open, please come. You can make the argument, I think credibly, that this day should have arrived sooner. There are countries that have had higher vaccination rates than the U.S., and arguably if some of those countries had opened their borders to the U.S., primarily those in Europe, we should have reciprocated earlier. What matters is today is finally here, and the U.S. is now open and welcoming people from dozens of countries, more than 30 countries, as you said.
Indeed, it is time to look forward. We also heard people, they may run into some problems, but given the excitement and the anticipation, these hiccups, the cancellations and such, it went amazingly smooth for the first day.
You know, so far so good. I think we were lucky here in the U.S. that there was no terribly bad weather delaying or canceling flights or any other problems. There are going to be hiccups in the first couple of days, as you would expect. United Airlines, for example, said that they're expecting 50% more inbound international visitors to the U.S. than they normally carry. So there will be more people. It takes longer to verify all the information. The burden of proof, if you will, is on airlines or their representatives at the check-in airport to validate that the person has a negative COVID test and is fully vaccinated. And that takes time. I've traveled to Europe twice since August. It can take anywhere from 8 to 10 minutes to get through the check-in process. That's much longer than normal.
Wow, interesting. You know, you talked about the burden of proof, and I'm curious about something. We here in the United States do not know a lot about vaccine passports. The U.S. not using that system, but it is being implemented in Europe. How effective, what security measures are in place to avoid fraud and non-vaccinated people from boarding flights? Is the onus on security or, as you said, just simply on the airlines?
Well, the onus is on the airlines, but the airlines have to rely on everything being accurate. The advantage that people have where their governments have issued a digital vaccination certificate is that it is validated information and supposedly linked to a central database. I actually, when I was in Europe the first time in August, got the EU vaccination certificate. It made travel within Europe as well as my return to the US a bit more efficient than having to show the CDC card. However, at this point, airlines and their representatives, at least in Europe, are more accustomed to this. I think it may take a little bit of time for the airlines and representatives in other countries that have not had the benefit of travel from the U.S. to get up to speed. That said, airline and airport workers are pretty efficient and resilient, so I expect that the learning curve will be a short one.
Yeah, and a lot of these airline workers have been asked to go beyond the extra mile. Here in the U.S., we have seen a really nasty wave of passenger violence on too many domestic flights. Is that a concern for international flights? I can't imagine something happening over the Pacific or over the Atlantic Ocean and the crew having to deal with it.
Unfortunately, it cannot be ignored, regardless of whether you're on a U.S. or non-U.S. airline. I think crews are trained now. They are ready for it. For the most part, I guess what we have to recognize is as awful as these incidents are and as unacceptable as they happen on a very small number of flights. And so far, they have been predominantly on domestic flights within the U.S. My hope is we see not only no incidents on international flights, but that we don't see any more incidents on domestic flights in the U.S. either.
Yeah, here's to that. Now, from an economic standpoint, it has been a whole new world for airlines, hotels, and those businesses that depend on travel. Are these industries bouncing back, or are they rethinking how they do business?
Well, the answer is yes to both. Inbound international visitors to the U.S., business and leisure combined, are worth roughly $239 billion to our economy, according to the U.S. Travel Association. So it's big money, big business at stake. Now, the U.S. domestic industry has certainly adapted to the fact that it's mostly leisure travel. But one good thing is that while domestic business travel had begun, the reopening of the U.S. to international visitors, I think, will be a further catalyst to international business travel resuming both inbound to the U.S. and outbound from the U.S. Hotels have adapted. We're seeing them adapt their services. For example, some hotels don't offer housekeeping because they're short-staffed. So we've seen in many U.S. communities restaurants and bars and other service establishments having to curtail hours because they're short-staffed. So the upside of international travel is more people. The downside is, will businesses be able to hire the workers they need to serve more customers?
Great analysis for us there. Henry Harteveldt, travel industry analyst and president of Atmosphere Research Group. Henry, thanks again.